Hello YouTube, this is Neon, and today the title of my talk is going to be Women and E equals MC squared. This of course is the world's most famous equation by the incomparable Albert Einstein. I had watched a Nova special on E equals MC squared quite some years ago. It went into the fundamental laws of force, of matter, and of light, which really were the precursors. An understanding of these three things were the precursors to this equation, E equals MC squared. So on the basis of that alone, I watched this special. I was delighted to see that women played a role both before and after. Women played major roles in the things that led up to E equals MC squared and to the things that succeeded E equals MC squared. Things that went after. Now, I don't know the names of these women. I saw this documentary probably 10 years ago, which is when I believe it first came out. Now, the first law, the fundamental law of mass, is that mass can neither be created nor destroyed. And there was a French scientist who proved this by burning lots of different things and substances in a not in a vacuum, but in a closed environment. And he basically was able to show that mass could be changed, but it couldn't be destroyed. He had a woman partner, and I believe she was either his wife or lover as well, and they did these experiments together. She played a major role in this. He's most famous for splitting water and into hydrogen and oxygen, and then he lit one of the two on fire to show that, it was still there, you couldn't see it, and it still had the same weight, right? It still had the same mass. But a woman played a major role in that. That's the fundamental law of mass. The fundamental law of force is force equals mass times speed squared. Now, Newton came up with this law, but according to this Nova special, he believed that force equaled mass times speed, and that was it. There was a man who disagreed with him, and there was a woman scientist who disagreed with him. This woman was really liberated, by the way. She was liberated sexually. I understand that she had a few lovers, and she was very confident in her sexuality. She was also very intelligent. She was a genius. She had no problem with competing with men in intelligence. She also championed the idea that in fact force equaled mass times speed squared. And she had devised an experiment that really clearly showed that when a marble is dropped into clay at one speed, where it impacts the clay at a certain speed, then it's dropped from a higher elevation so that it impacts the clay at double the speed, that in fact the distance that marble penetrates the clay is not doubled, it is in fact quadrupled. So she was clearly able to show that force equals mass times speed squared. So the faster an object's moving, its potential energy, right, such should it crash into something, exponentiates. Okay, it does not increase linearly or linear wise. So to see that a woman championed that when Newton, who was kind of a god, had it wrong, was pretty amazing. The fundamental law of light, according to this documentary, women didn't play a role in that. It was a male scientist. He discovered the speed of light. He discovered that light is both I believe, a wavelength and a substance both at the same time. And I'm not an expert on this. I was not an AP student. I don't have a degree in physics or chemistry or math, so I'm not that book smart and I'm not going to try to pretend to. But it was a man who discovered really the fundamental laws of light. And in fact, that light travels. Now, Lisa Meitner was a very famous physicist who was robbed of a Nobel Prize in physics. She had actually discovered that uranium used in the first atom bombs were in fact giving off radiation. Uranium naturally gives off a certain amount of radiation. And what she discovered was that the weight or the mass of this uranium was decreasing, and she found that it decreased in proportion to essentially the amount of radiation that it gave off, and she essentially was able to prove that E does equal mc squared. I can't go into detail about that because I don't understand that clearly. Or profoundly. Hopefully I explained that good enough for you. I hope. So, simultaneously, I don't know why I opened the door just now. Anyway, my biggest heroes have always been the biggest underdogs, and those are women of color. And I remember recently, within the last couple years certainly, going online and trying to find out, well, are there any women of color who have won Nobel Prizes in the sciences? And unfortunately there's not, unless you count Jewish women. There are a number of Jewish women who have won Nobel Prizes in either medicine, physics, or chemistry. I believe that it is because of the hatred of women, misogyny, which is how I define misogyny, that has resulted in women really not entering the sciences. I believe that when they do, they're clearly as brilliant as men, and their aptitude is equal to men. But I believe that they are constantly discriminated against and blocked from winning the Nobel Prize, blocked from doing any kind of research that could lead to winning the Nobel Prize. In fact, when women do get into the sciences, many times these brilliant women wind up just teaching because positions of research aren't open to women, and historically have not been. Hopefully that's not so much true today, but it has historically been the case. The first African American woman who got a PhD in physics, unfortunately she wound up just teaching, because they were not going to allow an African American woman to be a researcher at a big university. You had to be a white male to do that. If we allow African American women to do that, and really to show their brilliance, wow, all of humanity really is equal. You don't have to be a white male to do this kind of work, because we're all equal. So she wound up going into teaching. There's other women, and as I said, there are no women of color who have won Nobel Prize in the sciences, except for a number of Jewish women. The number of women who have won Nobel Prizes represents about 10% of all of Nobel Prizes in the sciences. They represent about 10% of all of the winners. All of the other winners are male. There is a disproportionately large percent of Jewish winners. Jewish people globally make up 0.2% of the world's population, or perhaps 0.02, I don't remember. But it's a very small percentage of the world's population, yet Jewish scientists represent 20% of the winners of Nobel Prizes in the sciences. And that is the same with Jewish women. Of all the women winners of the Nobel Prize in the sciences, 20% of those women are actually Jewish women. Quite fascinating. Now, there's a number of women of color, including Lisa Meitner, who were denied the Nobel Prize. Her German colleague actually ended up winning it that year, and I don't know exactly what for in physics, but she led that study. She was the head of that study. That she was the head of that study, and she she definitely should have been the first named person to win, perhaps with him as her assistant being a co-winner, but she should have been the first name. That was really her. She was the one who headed that study. There's a Chinese woman scientist who should have won the Nobel Prize but was denied as well. Her work that led to scientists winning a Nobel Prize, and I don't remember what year or in which science, would have been impossible without her work. And the Nobel Prize Committee does not posthumously award Nobel Prizes. So there's no way this particular Chinese woman scientist was going to win. Now, Watson and Crick, I believe they won the Nobel Prize for, I don't know, I guess in chemistry, I don't know if it's chemistry, physics, but for drawing a pattern of human DNA. And in fact, there was a woman, she was the first scientist to isolate human DNA. She used crystals to do so. I do not understand the science that she did or how she did it beyond what I just described. Without her work, without her being the first scientist to isolate human DNA, there's no way Watson and Crick could have written or could have done the diagram for human DNA, could have made a model for human DNA. So she should have won, but she had died and they don't award them posthumously. In the case of the Chinese scientist, my understanding is that the male scientist that won wanted her name included because they knew she was a part of their work, but the Nobel Prize Committee said no. They tried to deny Marie Curie her first Nobel Prize, but she led that study. And Pierre, who was a co-winner, and her husband actually changed his research to what she was researching, which was radiation. And to my understanding, she was the head of that study. And he said, there's no way I can take this Nobel Prize if my wife isn't awarded the study. She really was at the helm of this study. There's no way. So his loyalty to his wife and to human decency had a lot to do with why Marie Curie was as well awarded the Nobel Prize. There's so much discrimination against women in the sciences. It's frightening. It's disgusting. It's despicable. I believe it continues to go on today. I believe that women, geniuses who could really excel in physics and chemistry and medicine and mathematics, they're called iconoclasts. They're discouraged. It's not right. It's as though men want to say, we want you for sex, and that's mainly what we want you for. After that, perhaps to raise our children and to cook for us, right, to tend home. But we don't want you to demonstrate that you're also as intelligent as we are, because that would make you superior to us, because you're better looking and you're more desirable, and these kinds of things. It's just my theory as to why men try to block women from excelling in the sciences. I believe that there are women who, and I've heard women make this complaint against other women, there's women who are very, very intelligent and they don't really achieve their potential because they don't see that as being feminine. So, although intelligence is a feminine quality, brilliance is a feminine quality. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, comment commercials, recommend my videos, do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.